Welcome to 11 Recaps. Before we start, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps me keep creating content that entertain you. So, can I count on your support? Thank you for subscribing. Let's get started. Nitro Rush opens with a flashback depicting a celebration atop a building, where a group of individuals indulges in an illicit substance known as Nitro Rush. The effects of this illegal drug lead users to experience hallucinations, causing them to believe they possess wings and can soar through the air. One by one, they leap from the building, filled with exhilaration. The scene then shifts to a male inmate named Max, who is engaged in physical training within the confines of the prison. After completing his workout, he pauses to gaze at a photograph of his young son. At that moment, a police officer informs him of a visit from his father. Max promptly makes his way to the visitation room. Upon meeting his father, Meg, he receives a birthday gift consisting of a book and a recent photograph of his son, Theo. Meg expresses concern, mentioning that Theo has not been home recently and has not communicated with him. Later in the day, Max reflects on cherished memories with his family while resting his eyes. His moment of tranquility is abruptly interrupted by other inmates, whom he swiftly confronts, overpowering them. Meanwhile, two young hackers, Charlie and Theo, are monitoring the activities of scientists engaged in research. They are attempting to infiltrate an illegal laboratory's website, but their actions have drawn the attention of law enforcement due to their involvement in online fraud. The next morning, news of their arrest is broadcasted, revealing that only a man named Avoka, their leader, has been apprehended. Theo and Charlie, being minors, are released under special supervision. While preparing a cup of coffee, Meg inadvertently sees the news report and rushes to the police station to secure Theo's release. Upon returning home, he reprimands Theo and offers guidance, but Theo dismisses his father's counsel. Theo retorts that his actions pale in comparison to his father's lengthy prison sentence. He then retreats to his room, slamming the door behind him. After a period of discomfort in solitude, Theo decides to escape through the window to return to his place of work. Max, who was incarcerated, received a summons from a police officer. He was instructed to meet an individual in the upper room. Complying promptly, he proceeded there while handcuffed and took a seat to await the man's arrival. Shortly thereafter, a woman, identified as the police director, entered the room. She presented a photograph of a man named Avoka, whom Max recognized immediately. Avoka was the individual responsible for selling illegal hearts to Max's wife, whose heart surgery had tragically failed, resulting in her death. The director then revealed a bottle containing a new illicit substance known as Nitro Rush. This drug, when ingested, induces madness and delusions of having wings. The details surrounding its distribution remain confidential, but law enforcement suspects Avoka and his associates are involved. Currently, the police are searching for the creator of Nitro Rush, as Avoka has been apprehended and is incarcerated alongside Max. Upon hearing this, Max felt no inclination to assist her. However, she informed him that his son, Theo, had become affiliated with Avoka's gang, showing him a photograph of Theo's arrest. Overcome with emotion, Max ultimately consented to aid the police. He quickly sought out Avoka, who was imprisoned in the same facility. Upon confronting Avoka, Max struck him and one of his subordinates. He issued a stern warning to Avoka, threatening that if he wished to survive, he should refrain from involving his son in criminal activities. A police officer intervened, but Max took him hostage to facilitate his escape from prison. As Max attempted to flee, he was pursued by several officers. He managed to evade capture by leaping from the roof of the building. Upon reaching the exterior of the prison, he encountered a police officer in a vehicle, who aimed a firearm at him. In a swift move, Max seized the gun from the officer and commandeered the car to make his escape. Following that, he promptly proceeded to his father's residence to find Theo. Upon arriving home, he inquired of his father regarding Theo's whereabouts. However, their search in Theo's room yielded no results. The next day, his father transported Max to Theo's workplace. Once they arrived, Max attempted to survey the premises. At that moment, a black car pulled up, and a woman exited the vehicle alongside Theo and one of his acquaintances. They swiftly entered the building. Max attempted to follow them inside, but unexpectedly, one of them opened the door, inadvertently revealing his presence. It was known that Max had a criminal background. A man named Callus intervened, preventing Max from entering. Callus warned him against proceeding, fearing that the police might be trailing him. Nevertheless, Max remained undeterred. He sought to gain entry through the rear entrance, only to be intercepted by a woman named Daphne, who had been in the black car with Theo. Upon realizing he was Theo's father, she informed him that it was not an appropriate time for a meeting. Max, however, persisted and disregarded her warning, continuing his search for Theo within the building. When they finally encountered each other, Theo expressed his anger, believing that Max was responsible for his mother's death. Disappointed, Theo demanded that Max leave. Subsequently, Theo approached Daphne. Daphne informed Max that she could facilitate a reconciliation with Theo, but only if he agreed to join their cause. Intrigued by the proposition, Max expressed his willingness to join. She then escorted him to her residence, where Theo was staying. Meanwhile, Theo was seen in a field with Charlie, who urged him to recognize and appreciate the efforts of his father, who had escaped from prison to see him. Charlie encouraged Theo to value his father's sacrifices. Theo also mentioned that Charlie was unaware of his own emotions. Following the death of his mother, his father was incarcerated for many years due to multiple homicides. Max eventually reached Daphne's residence. Upon arrival, she informed him that they were in the process of locating the Nitro Rush formula, which has gained popularity among drug users. She revealed that the creators of Nitro Rush were two scientists situated deep within a secluded forest. Daphne further stated that acquiring the Nitro Rush formula could potentially make them the wealthiest individuals in the world. Shortly thereafter, Theo arrived at Daphne's house accompanied by Charlie and Collis. Daphne approached Theo, who was visibly upset, and urged him to show respect for Max, as Max was prepared to make sacrifices for him and join their efforts. In a moment of affection, she kissed Theo, who felt a surge of happiness, having harbored feelings for her all along. Once they were all together, Theo and Charlie promptly detailed the route to the Nitro Rush formula. According to their findings, the two scientists had secured the mixture on a flash drive that was protected by a password. Consequently, they were unable to access it remotely. They also noted that the laboratory was located in a remote forest, equipped with a ground alarm system that would alert the scientists to any intruders. Max quickly devised a strategy to infiltrate the lab without making contact with the ground. He informed Daphne of his need for a training area to execute this plan, to which she consented. The following morning, they commenced training exercises, including activities like zip lining, which would enable them to access the lab without ever touching the ground. Afterward, Max requested Daphne to enhance their vehicle, as it lacked the necessary power to navigate through the isolated forest. He then took the car to Hubert's workshop for an engine upgrade. While waiting for the modifications to be completed, they engaged in shooting practice. Subsequently, he invited Theo to take a spin in Hubert's sports car. Their relationship, which had shown signs of improvement, deteriorated once more. Theo was suddenly reminded of the past when Max neglected to care for his mother. In response, Max asserted that Theo's beliefs were unfounded, claiming he would even sacrifice his life for her. Subsequently, Max cautioned Theo against getting too close to Daphne, suggesting that she was merely playing with his emotions and using him for her own purposes. Unfazed by this advice, Theo dismissed Max and walked away. Unbeknownst to both, Callis was recording their exchange. He promptly transmitted the video to Avoka via his mobile device and instructed Callis to monitor their activities. As night fell, Max found himself unable to sleep. Unexpectedly, Daphne arrived to see him, playfully teasing him. She persistently suggested they engage in sexual activity, believing he was restless due to such thoughts. Max firmly declined, aware of his son's feelings for Daphne. Unbeknownst to them, Theo was observing the scene through a CCTV monitor, feeling disheartened that the woman he loved seemed to prefer his father's company. The next day, they prepared to head to the lab. However, just as they were about to depart, Callis appeared to be sampling the Nitro Rush liquid. Upon reaching the forest, they decided to proceed without him and Charlie, who were tasked with guarding the vehicle. Meanwhile, Max, Theo, and Daphne made their way to the lab. Concurrently, two scientists, Chemistic and Resin, left the lab in search of breakfast. Max then stealthily infiltrated the lab using a zip line, successfully reaching the roof. Unfortunately, as Theo attempted to use the rope, his cell phone slipped from his grasp and fell. He quickly retrieved it, but Max insisted he leave the phone behind due to safety concerns. Once inside the lab, Theo immediately began transferring data from the scientist's computer to his flash drive. Simultaneously, Callis, whose emotions were spiraling out of control due to the effects of the nitrogen rush liquid, acted impulsively. He drove his vehicle toward the laboratory with the intent to crash into it. A bewildered Charlie promptly contacted Daphne, informing her that Callis was en route to the lab. In response, they quickly sought to escape. Callis's reckless behavior alerted the scientists to the fact that someone had breached their laboratory. Consequently, they hurried back to the lab to apprehend the intruders. Callis's vehicle reached the lab, where he requested the concoction from Daphne. Shortly thereafter, the two scientists arrived and immediately opened fire on them. Max urgently instructed everyone to enter the car. He accelerated away from the scene, but the two scientists were relentless in their pursuit. Utilizing his driving skills, Max ultimately managed to evade them, steering the car toward his father's residence. Meanwhile, the scientists returned to the lab, where they were taken aback to discover that Max and his team had absconded with their nitro rush liquid. In a fortunate turn of events, they stumbled upon Theo's cell phone, which had been dropped earlier that day, allowing them to track the group's location. Max and his team reached Meg's house, where Callus initiated a video call with Avoka. He informed him of the theft of the nitro rush concoction. Callus requested that Daphne provide him with the mixture on a flash drive, but she declined. This refusal incited his anger, leading him to threaten Theo's life if she did not comply. However, unbeknownst to Callus, Theo had changed the password to his flash drive without anyone's knowledge. Realizing this, Callus refrained from harming Theo. Avoka then suggested that Callus eliminate Daphne, deeming her no longer useful. Just as he prepared to attack her, the scientists who had successfully tracked their location arrived on the scene. The two individuals swiftly launched an assault on Meg's residence, armed with rifles. In response, Max quickly took cover to protect himself and retaliated by striking back at them. He forcefully broke down the door from within and leaped towards his assailants. Upon his descent, the two attackers immediately pounced on him, forcing him back to the ground. Observing this, Daphne rushed out of the house to assist Max. She delivered a powerful blow to one of the scientists with her bare hand. Meanwhile, Max managed to regain his footing and proceeded to overpower Resin until he was incapacitated. At the same time, Daphne, having engaged one of the scientists, found herself in a precarious situation as she was being choked by another. Fortunately, as she fell, she discovered a rifle that she could use against her attackers. Just as she was about to take lethal action, Max shouted for her to refrain from killing him. Heeding his advice, she opted to shoot the scientist in the leg, preventing his escape. Daphne, who had sustained injuries during the altercation, ultimately collapsed and lost consciousness. At that moment, police arrived at Meg's house via helicopter. They promptly assisted Daphne and apprehended all the criminals involved. Max then informed Theo that the entire incident had been orchestrated, beginning with his escape from prison and culminating in the theft of the Nitro Rush formula. This operation had been sanctioned by the police president, under the pretense that Max's actions were intended to benefit the police and aid Theo in avoiding a wrongful path. Subsequently, Max requested that Theo surrender the flash drive to the authorities. However, Theo revealed that he had deleted the Nitro Rush recipe from the device, indicating that he had not actually copied the mixture onto his flash drive all along. He removed it directly from the computers of the two scientists while they were situated deep in the forest. This action was taken by Theo to ensure that the Nitro Rush recipe would remain unknown to anyone in the world. Consequently, everything would return to safety. In summary, Max found himself back in prison after a few days. Upon his arrival, the police director summoned him to her office. She informed Max that his family's identity had once again been compromised. Additionally, she assigned him the responsibility of safeguarding his family, to which he consented. The film concludes. The lesson we can derive from this narrative is that regardless of the shortcomings of our parents, they are often willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of their family. However, if he fails to protect a family member, it does not warrant hatred towards him, as we may not fully understand the challenges he has faced in his efforts to shield his loved ones.